Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats, Part 1.
A jewel amongst the odes of romantic poets, Ode to a Nightingale is a masterpiece by John Keats. John Keats was a family man, and for him, his family was everything. When his brother George and his wife left for America, John felt a void in his life. As if this was not enough, his brother Tom suffered from tuberculosis, and the poet did all he could to nurse his brother. As it is said, when sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. John Keats's friend Charles Brown described how the poem Ode to a Nightingale was composed in a single morning in the spring of 1819. A nightingale had built her nest near the poet's house. Keats felt a tranquil and continual joy in her song, and one morning he took his chair to the grass plot under a plum tree, where he sat for 2 or 3 hours. When he came into the house, Brown perceived he had some scraps of paper in his hand, and these he was quietly thrusting behind the books. On enquiry, Charles found those scraps, only 4 or 5 in number, contained Keats's poetic feelings, the Song of the Nightingale. Of no other of the dozen or score of the greatest lyrics in English do we know as a fact that it was written in so short a time. Moreover, this poem is no brief song, but an ode of 80 lines in an intricately regular stanza. We are free to doubt whether any poem in English of comparable length and quality has been composed so quickly. Let's explore the all-time favorite ode of John Keats. My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense. As though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains, 1 minute passed, and Lethe words had sunk. The feeling of numbness and pain in Keats is associated with a diversity of strong impressions. The poet compares his feelings with those of a person who has tasted a bit of hemlock. He also asserts that his mood can be compared with the drinking of an opiate till he reaches Hades and drinks the water of Lethe to forget the pains of earthly life. The ode falls into 2 almost equal portions, the break coming near the close of the 4th stanza. The first half of the poem continues to identify with the bird and its song. The real beauty of the poem is the poet's desire to enjoy the song of the nightingale. More than any other ode, the nightingale picks up the theme of the impromptu lines a few months earlier in his Ode to Psyche. Ever let the fancy roam, pleasure never is at home. But the bitterness of these two lines has completely disappeared in the rich, troubled stanza that begin the ode. It's not through envy of the happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged triad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. The poet claims that he is not envious of the bird's good luck. The heart is almost drugged with the music of the bird nearing the beginning of May, can be felt to sing of summer in full-throated ease. Yet, at the very start, there is a hesitation between reality and unreality. This light-winged bird cannot be definitely placed, is partly thought of as dryad from the world of Arcadia. The brevity of the experience is also known and frankly implied at the start. As if to emphasize it further, the poet would like to be with the nightingale by fading away into the forest dim. The second stanza turns to the immediate wish for a supporting intoxication by drinking wine of a vintage year. Oh, for a draught of vintage that has been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful Hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. But the list of these associations with wine, the country green, dance, sunburnt mirth, the warm south, is already fading as the second stanza closes. Leave the world, and with thee fade away. Betray the inevitable return to self and introduce the third stanza, which can continue the assertion negatively. Fade, far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou amongst the leaves hast never known. The weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, to say that the attempted identification with the bird is flagging and that the assertion is becoming negative by no means implies a lapse or stagger in the poem, though the lines are sometimes described as such. Partly because of its bare phrasing, the third stanza, which is poignant, a reference to Tom's death. It is this ultimate helplessness that underlines the troubled fourth stanza, near the close of which the poem makes its essential turn. After the stark directness of the preceding lines, John addresses the nightingale. Away, away, for I will fly to thee. Not to whine, but the viewless wings of poesy transports the poet to the forest in spite of obstacles. For I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his bards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee. Tender is the night, and haply the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy vales. Then, in 3 words, the union is simply declared. But the short effect of poesy, used solely in this way for escape or illusion, results only in 2 lines of futile ornament. The queen moon, attended by her starry face. Until the end of the ode, the separateness of the poet and the bird is mentioned. Henceforth, the poet sits and listens. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, and then darkling I listen. And ironically, with this acceptance of reality, the appeal to poetry for liberation is answered, though not at all in the way originally asked, not as a means to fly to the bird on viewless wings and leave the actual world of process. For the first time in the ode, we have a stanza in which all the poet is trying to escape is completely absent. The liberation, as always, has come through a direct, sympathetic response to concrete reality. The strain and exclamations, "Oh for, away, away," disappear. He is content to guess, and the thick cluster of classical associations used to reinforce the impossible imaginative leap, like Lethe, Dryad, Flora, Hippocrene, Bacchus, to give way to naturalistic detail, firmly imagined despite the growing dark.
Thank you. We continue with the analysis in part 2.